Holy cow, the keyboard community is crazy for Holy Pandas. We got Holy Pandas, Holy Jesus, two different flavors so far of Holy Yak, and now a new contender enters the ring, a new housing that you can use to make holy somethings out of. This new one is called the Clear Panda, brought to you by the same guy who organized the Jesus Switch group buy and manufactured by Bsun, just like all the other Panda variants. This one has a translucent milky bottom and a clear transparent top. Again, it's a plate mount switch. The top appears to be the same as the clear tops that Bsun uses in their Bsun brown switches, and it comes with a trash linear stem that you'll probably throw away. So let's see how this new switch stacks up in comparison to the other Panda variants out there. I've put in this keyboard along this top row here, the function row, 6 different existing Panda variants that I have access to, and we can listen and see how the sound compares between all these 6, and then we can talk about how the feel compares, and I'll show you which one's which. So to me, all these sound quite similar, and to be honest with you, they all feel just about the same as well. So all of these switches have the Halo True Stem in them, and to make it fair, I've used the same spring as well, the Sprit 68 gram spring in all 6 of these switches. Now let me show you which one's which, and we'll talk more about similarities and differences. So out of these, the far left one is the original Holy Panda. This is a Holy Jesus. This is obviously a red Yak. This is a mint Yak. This is the all-new Clear Panda. So this is a Holy Clear Panda, I guess. And this is a Bsun brown housing, or Bsun, so I guess, I don't know, brown panda, whatever you want to call it. So out of these, the only one that really feels significantly different to me is this one. So the Bsun brown housing just isn't as tactile, and other people have noticed that before in the past, and that's, I think, why that one didn't catch on as a popular housing to use to make Holy Panda derivatives. But the rest of these all feel really tactile to me. I don't have a machine to graph a force curve for these switches, so I can't be super scientific about it, but they all feel very similar to me. The only thing I could say is maybe the OG Holy Panda might feel just a tiny bit different, but it's such a subtle difference that I'm not even sure if I'm imagining it. Without being able to do a force graph, I'm not sure. But the thing that I can say with a little more confidence is that these 4 more modern Holy Panda clones, you could say, they all pretty much feel about the same to me in terms of smoothness and tactility. Now that could be interesting if you really like your RGBs, because obviously the new Clear Panda with the translucent bottom and a clear top is going to really let that RGB shine. And I can show you what I'm talking about if you can imagine, but so obviously most of the different Holy Panda type of switches are going to block a lot of the SMD RGB light. But as you can see, the Clear Panda doesn't. The Clear Panda really lets it through. Maybe I can turn these lights off for a sec. So if this is important to you, then you should be happy to know that you can make Holy Clear Pandas and you'll be able to get the most out of your RGBs if you have especially the SMD RGB LEDs. Now other than that, what about wobble? So starting with the OG Holy Panda, I don't know that there's much of a difference, but I think if anything, the GSUS I think has a little bit less wobble. It seems like they might have tightened up the top just a touch. And then the Yoks seem to be about the same as well. You know, both versions. This is just a recolor of this. And similarly, the Clear Panda seems to have the same amount of wobble. So all these switches are really similar, if you ask me. I think the main difference is just the Bsun brown is kind of the less tactile little brother out of all these housings. I actually kind of like that in a way, because for me, Holy Pandas, sometimes the tactility is a little much for me. Sometimes I like to have something a little bit less tactile. So, as for the sound, one thing that can be a pitfall doing this kind of a sound test is the position of the switch in the keyboard can make a difference in the sound. So, if you'll bear with me for just a minute here, I can do another sound test where I use a switch tester instead of a keyboard. That might provide a little bit more consistency in terms of the sound not being affected by the keyboard position as much. Let's zoom out a bit here. So what I can do here is I can space these apart so that each one has an empty space next to it. And in my experience, that's kind of the most consistent way to compare the sound. So on a switch modding station like this, you don't have any standoffs, you don't have anything supporting it from underneath, you don't have differences in the way the material's machined in the keyboard. It's just a uniform piece of acrylic, all the same thickness, nothing to make the sound differ between one switch and the next. So let's try it again. So I did run into one slight issue here. This switch modding station has feet on the bottom of it, so it's actually not as consistent of sound as I thought it would be. So I can fix that real quick though. I can just put something under it, a towel. So that should solve that problem. Okay, now let's try. Let me also position the microphone so it's as close to equally distant from them all as possible. So you can be the judge, but I don't hear any significant difference in the sound between these four, which are all the recent Panda revivals. You know, the GSUS, the two different Yaks, and the clear Panda. And I think they feel almost identical. I don't have a way to measure it really, but I think it's possible that there could be just the tiniest difference in tactility. Like the clear Panda to me, and maybe it just has more factory lube or something, I don't know, but no, you know, it feels about the same to me. I can't really feel a difference. It might be my imagination, but the clear Panda to me feels just the tiniest bit less tactile than the others, than the other five. Not this one. This one's the least tactile. This is the Bsun brown switch that you can buy on 1UP keyboards. So this one definitely is the least tactile. But after that, I kind of feel like the clear Panda feels a little bit less tactile than the other Panda variants. So, good idea would be to, I think, look into that and see, you know, what could explain that difference in tactility. So, first thing that comes to mind is the leaf. So something about the Bsun switches, they seem to have a different leaf in the Bsun brown switch than what they had in the Pandas switch or the GSUS or the GSUS switches. So if we pop these open real quick, we may be able to tell whether they have the higher tactility leaf that the Pandas and GSUS have, or if they have the lower tactility leaf like the Bsun brown, or if they have, some other leaf that we haven't seen before. So let's just see real quick if it's a clear difference. Down, then they're tight. Okay, so let me take these, put them close together, make it easier for us to compare them. Okay. So it seems like it wasn't my imagination. It looks like we do have a difference here. It looks like the clear panda leaf is not exactly the same as the Panda, GSUS, and GSUS leaf, but it's also, I think, not exactly the same as the Bsun brown leaf, which kind of makes me wonder, where did this leaf come from? Is this a new leaf that they've created to try to mimic the tactility of the Panda at a lower price or something? I don't know. I had heard that the original leaves originally used in Pandas were hard to get or something like that. So it's kind of interesting here. Looking at some of the features, so this part doesn't look the same to me. So, the rightmost one is the Bsun brown switch. The middle one is the clear panda, and the leftmost is the GSUS. Now this part here doesn't look the same to me on the Bsun brown as the clear panda. This little contact point, to me on the clear panda, it looks more like the one that the GSUS has. But the actual material, at least the surface finish on the leaf of the clear panda looks more like the surface finish of the Bsun brown switch. That's really interesting, and I think that could account for that tiny difference in tactility. It's not much. I mean, it's small enough that I could hardly even be sure if I was imagining it. But I think it's there. I think there's a difference there. You can see the coloration and the surface finish. One has almost like a more copper tone to it, and one almost more golden. Now, if we look at them from the side, we can compare the profile of the leaf bump, which is what creates the tactility. See if there's anything obvious going on there that could explain the difference. One sec. Try to line these up so that they're easy to tell what's what. Here. So this is the one from the Yak. So to me, the Bsun brown leaf is noticeably not the same. That one, the leaf bump is, I think, pretty noticeably different compared to the other two. But I think the other two, the clear panda and the Yak, are virtually the same bump profile. The leaf bump. Let's see here. So they're not exactly the same, but I think they're not exactly the same, but they're very close. I think you can pretty much tell that the Bsun brown is certainly not the same shape. You can see, especially the left end of it kind of ends sooner, and it seems to almost have a maybe more rounded shape, less triangular. But then, to me, I don't think the clear panda leaf bump looks exactly the same as the Yak leaf bump either. The Yak leaf bump to me looks a touch more triangular. This probably isn't the best way to compare them, but I think it's enough for you to see that there's a difference. So the clear panda bump looks a little more rounded to me, maybe a touch less triangular, less peaked. So this is really interesting. Without having all the information about where they source the leaves from, all I can do is guess. But if I had to guess, I would probably guess that maybe they improved their tooling. Whoever made the Bsun brown leaf, maybe they got this new clear panda leaf from them, but they improved their tooling or something like that. I don't know, because it does feel to me like it's an improvement. It's more tactile than the Bsun brown. It does feel almost identical to the Panda and GSUS leaf, but I don't necessarily think it's identical. But without having the equipment to do force graphs, that's about the best I can do to compare the two. So hopefully that's helpful. I would still recommend these switches because I think the Tactility, even if it's not identical, I think it's close enough that you might have a hard time telling which is which in a blind test. In fact, I think you would have a hard time telling which is which. And I can, maybe later I can, with someone's help, I can do a blind test myself and see if I'm able to tell the difference, to try to rule out confirmation bias. But for now, just based on the visual differences, I'm going to, conclude that they're not the same, but they're very close, and I would say close enough that I would still buy this switch, assuming that the price is reasonable, because it looks cool and it sounds good like the others, and it's going to actually work better than the others by far when it comes to RGB. So I think there's a good use case for this switch, and the difference in tactility is minimal. I also know a lot of people are buying switches like the T1, for example, that also, in my estimation, are not as tactile either, and yet it's still close to as tactile, and it's still a very good switch. So I wouldn't get too hung up on whether the switch is going to be 100% as tactile as an OG Holy Panda. You know, I think it's close enough. Let me think here. Is there any way I could do a blind test? I don't really think so, because I have to be able to see what I'm doing when I put the switches together. And so then it's not going to be possible to do a blind test. But so another thing I'll do soon, very soon, is I'll populate a keyboard with Holy Clear Pandas and see how it sounds. And I'll record a typing test with that same keyboard using either my OG Holy Pandas or my Holy Jesus, or maybe Holy Ox, one of those, and do a sound comparison. I'm going to close my eyes and try to, you know what, maybe I can do a blind test. Okay, let's try this here. Okay. Now, my eyes are closed right now. They all have the same row profile keycap on them. So I think I'll be able to do kind of a blind test. What I'll do is I'll just randomly pick one of each and put them in the switch tester. I'm doing all this with my eyes closed to try to make it a blind test here. Ooh, that one's really... I almost feel like that one's more tactile. But it's about the same. It feels less to me. Let's see. It's really nice and snappy. That one feels less. It's actually quite tactile. Let's see. About the same as that one. Okay, out of these two, let's see. I had two that I thought felt less. This is, I think, the least. Yeah, that feels less tactile. Okay, let's see what I came up with. See if I guessed correctly. So the one that I ranked as least tactile was, well, no surprise. In the blind test, the Bsun or Bsun Brown was the one that felt least tactile to me. That's a relief to me because I already know this is least tactile, so thank goodness that bore out in a blind test. Now, surprisingly, the next one that I thought was a little bit less tactile than the rest was the red Yak, which I wouldn't expect because this appears to have the same leaf as the others. Now these three switches felt about the same to me. And what are they? Holy Jesus. OG Holy Panda. And a Mint Yak. And somehow, in the blind test, the one I thought felt the most snappily tactile was actually the clear Panda. So that's a big surprise to me. So I think this is a good example of how sometimes a confirmation bias can color your perception of something, because I was struggling to tell if I could actually feel a difference or not between the clear Panda and the other Panda switches. And I thought it felt a little bit different in a way that was a little bit less tactile. But then when I did a blind test, I actually thought it felt more tactile than the others, just a tiny bit more tactile. So I would say in this test, the only one that had like a really obvious difference was this one, the Bsun Brown. The rest of them, I really was struggling with whether there was even a difference at all. And I know objectively that this one has the same leaf as this one, and the same stem, and the same spring, and the same housing, everything the same except for the color. So this doesn't make sense that that one of these would be less tactile than the other, unless it's just down to, you know, different tolerances. So I think it's safe to assume that the clear Panda is either as tactile as the others or close enough that you'll never know the difference. So I'm pretty happy with those results. I would definitely be comfortable recommending the clear Panda. I think it sounds the same. I think it feels the same. And it seems like a good bet if you want to get your optimal RGBs. So hope that video helped someone, and hope it wasn't too long. If you have any suggestions or anything else you want me to try, since I have all these different variations, just let me know, and have a good one.